The night sky over Montana suddenly turned strange colors, blue, green, and red lights dancing like fire across the stars. Sarah Chin stood on her porch, coffee cup halfway to her lips. She had seen shooting stars before, but this was different. The light moved too slow, too heavy, and it screamed as it fell, like something alive and in pain. "Mom?" Marcus shouted from inside the house. "Are you seeing this?" Sarah didn't answer. She was already running inside for her truck keys. "Get the emergency kit from the barn," she said. "The big one." Her 17-year-old son hesitated. "What if it's dangerous? We should call someone." "We will," Sarah said, her voice firm. "But first we see if anyone needs help." "Move, Marcus." He didn't argue. He knew that tone. The sky roared again and a huge flash lit up the valley. The ground shook, rattling windows and sending birds screaming from the trees. Whatever it was had crashed about 5 miles north of their ranch, right where Old Man Patterson's cattle usually grazed. Sarah's truck bounced along the dirt road, headlights slicing through smoke and dust. Marcus sat beside her, pale-faced, clutching his phone. "What if it's a plane?" he asked. "Or a satellite? Or—" "Could be," Sarah said, keeping her eyes on the road. "Could be something else entirely." He swallowed. "You mean aliens?" Sarah didn't reply. She just pressed harder on the gas. When they crested the ridge, they saw it, the crash site. The earth was torn open for nearly a mile, a long, burning trench of fire and metal. At the end of it sat something that looked half ship, half nightmare, like 10 broken machines welded together by desperate hands. Sparks still jumped from its cracked surface. Sarah parked 100 feet away. "Stay close," she said. "And if I say run, you run." Marcus nodded, his hands shaking. They stepped out. The air smelled like burned metal and ozone. Sarah's flashlight cut through the smoke as they moved closer. She saw strange markings on the ship's hull, circles and lines glowing faintly blue. Then something moved inside. "Hello?" Sarah called out. "Is anyone in there? We want to help." The movement froze. Then slowly something crawled into view. Sarah's breath caught. It was a creature, small, about 4 feet tall, covered in a shell that shimmered with rainbow light. It had 6 thin limbs, 2 of them held close like hands. Its head was large, with eyes like liquid glass. When it opened its mouth, the sound that came out wasn't words, but Sarah felt the emotion behind it. Fear. Pain. "It's okay," she said softly, like she was calming a scared horse. "We're here to help. Do you understand?" The creature tilted its head. Then it tapped something on its chest. A small device crackled to life and a robotic voice spoke. "Help. Please. Many hurt. Children hurt." Sarah's heart clenched. "Marcus," she said. "Call Doc Morrison. And Sheriff Bradley. Tell them we need medical supplies, blankets, and help from everyone." "Mom," Marcus whispered, "it's really an alien." "Then it's an alien that needs help," she said. "Now go." Within an hour, headlights filled the valley. Old pickup trucks and farm vehicles parked in a wide circle around the wreck. People Sarah had known all her life, neighbors, friends, and even people she hadn't spoken to in years, arrived carrying whatever they could. Doc Morrison came first, still in his nightshirt. He took one look at the alien and muttered, "Well, that's new," before grabbing his medical bag. More of the creatures emerged from the wreck, some limping, others carrying smaller ones. Sarah counted at least 200 of them. Most were hurt. All of them were terrified. The town moved fast. The Pattersons brought extra blankets. The Nguyen family brought water and food. The Martinez family set up tents from their farm. Even old Tom Wilkins, who always claimed to hate everyone, showed up with a box of emergency supplies and muttered, "Don't make a big deal out of it." As Doc Morrison worked, the creatures used their translator devices to speak. Their voices came broken, full of static, but Sarah understood enough. They were called the Vailani. They had been running from something terrible, something they called the hegemony. They had no weapons, no soldiers, only families who had lost everything. They had jumped through space blindly, hoping to find safety. They had not meant to come to Earth. Their ship had simply fallen. Marcus handed Sarah a blanket. She knelt beside a small Vailani child, who looked no older than 5 in human years. The child trembled, making a soft clicking sound. Sarah wrapped the blanket around its shoulders and smiled. "You're safe now," she whispered. For a moment, under the pale moonlight, it didn't feel like humans and aliens, it felt like people helping people. Then, in the distance came the low rumble of engines. Helicopters. Bright lights swept across the fields as military vehicles rolled in. Soldiers surrounded the camp, weapons raised. The hum of their drones filled the air. A woman in uniform stepped out of a helicopter, Colonel Rodriguez. Her face was hard, her voice sharp. "Ma'am, step away from them," she ordered. "This area is under federal control." Sarah stood firm. "They're injured. They need help." "They're unknown life forms," the colonel said. "They could be dangerous." Sarah pointed at the aliens. One was having its arm bandaged by Doc Morrison. Another was feeding a child from a bottle. "Do they look dangerous to you?" The colonel hesitated. The soldiers shifted uneasily. "Ma'am," the colonel said, lowering her voice, "you have no idea what you're protecting." Sarah looked around, the lights, the people, the frightened faces of the refugees, and then back at the colonel. "Maybe," Sarah said softly, "I'm protecting hope." The colonel said nothing. Above them, the night sky flickered again. Far beyond Earth, something in the darkness was listening. And it had just heard the refugees' distress signal. The unexpected war had already begun. Morning came gray and cold over the Montana Valley. Smoke still rose from the crash site. The once quiet ranchland now looked like something out of a dream, tents, trucks, and strange alien machines scattered across the field. Soldiers stood guard near the ship while townspeople handed out food and water. Humans and aliens worked side by side, though fear still hung in the air like fog. Sarah Chin hadn't slept all night. She stood by the fire with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise light up the Vailani ship. The aliens, small, delicate creatures with shimmering shells, were still afraid but calmer now. Some sat near heaters wrapped in blankets. Others helped repair damaged panels on their ship with glowing tools that hummed softly. Marcus walked up, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, do you think they'll let them stay?" Sarah looked at the line of soldiers beyond the tents. "I don't know," she said. "But I know we can't send them back into the sky. Not after what they've been through." Before Marcus could answer, a helicopter roared overhead and landed near the command tents. Colonel Rodriguez stepped out, her uniform sharp, her face unreadable. She spoke briefly with her officers before walking straight toward Sarah. "Mrs. Chin," the colonel said. "I need a word." Sarah nodded. "Of course." They walked a few paces away from the others. The colonel's voice was calm but heavy. "You did a brave thing last night. But now this situation belongs to the government. The refugees will be moved to a secure facility." Sarah frowned. "Secure? You mean a prison?" "A controlled environment," the colonel corrected. "Until we know who or what they are." "They're people," Sarah said. "You saw the children. The wounded. You saw how scared they were." "I also saw them repair their ship with tools that defy our physics," the colonel replied. "That makes them a risk." Sarah shook her head. "Risk or not, they asked for help. We gave it. That's who we are." The colonel sighed. "You're a good woman, Mrs. Chin. But compassion can get people killed." Sarah met her eyes. "So can fear." The two women stood there for a long moment. The wind whistled through the valley. Neither moved. Finally, the colonel turned away. "My orders stand," she said quietly. Later that morning, scientists arrived from Washington. They wore white suits and carried scanners. They walked around the Vailani ship, taking pictures, muttering words like biological risk and containment. The Vailani huddled together, confused and frightened. Their translator devices flickered weakly, catching only parts of the human speech. One small alien stepped forward, a leader perhaps. Its shell had deep cracks and one arm hung limp. "We do not wish harm," the device translated in a trembling voice. "We only run from death." Doc Morrison knelt beside it, checking its wounds. "You'll be all right," he said gently. "You're safe here." But even as he said it, soldiers began unloading transport trucks. Metal fences, floodlights, barriers. Marcus clenched his fists. "They're locking them up." Sarah's heart sank. "Not if I can stop it." She walked straight to the colonel's tent. "You can't fence them in like animals," she said firmly. "They're refugees." The colonel didn't look up from her tablet. "They're aliens. My orders are clear. No one leaves this valley." Sarah stepped closer. "They trusted us. You'll break that trust." The colonel looked up finally. "You think I don't see their fear? You think I want this?" Her voice cracked for just a moment. "But I follow orders. And you should go home before this gets worse." Sarah stood tall. "This is my home. And they're my guests now." That night, a cold wind swept across the fields. The soldiers kept their lights trained on the ship. Most of the townspeople had gone home, but Sarah and Marcus stayed. The Vailani leader approached them quietly. "You help?" the translator said softly. No fear. Why? Sarah smiled sadly. Because that's what we do. When someone falls, we help them stand. The alien's eyes shimmered like wet glass. You're different from others. Before Sarah could answer, a strange sound cut through the night, a deep hum coming from the Valani ship. The hull began to glow faintly. Marcus stepped back. Mom, what's happening? The Valani leader looked toward the ship, alarmed. Signal set. We called home. Home? Sarah repeated. You contacted your people? The alien shook its head slowly. Not home. We send before crash. Emergency beacon. Others may come. Colonel Rodriguez and her soldiers ran over. What's going on? Sarah shouted. It's their distress call. It just activated. The colonel's radio crackled. Ma'am, radar picking up something, multiple objects entering orbit. Everyone froze. Marcus looked at the sky. They found them, he whispered. The colonel's expression hardened. Everyone back, she ordered. Secure the perimeter. High above, the stars shifted. Faint trails of light moved silently across the heavens. Ships, huge and dark, descending from space. The Valani leader fell to its knees, trembling. The hegemony, it said. They come. They hunt us. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Then they'll find Earth standing in their way. The colonel glanced at her, surprised. For the first time she saw not just a farmer, but someone unafraid. Mrs. Chen, she said quietly, you might just get that war you warned me about. Sarah looked back at the glowing sky. It's not my war, she said. But it's on my land. And I'll defend it. Above them, the first alien warships entered Earth's orbit. Silent, massive shadows blotting out the stars. The unexpected war had truly begun. The night faded slowly into a pale gray dawn over the Montana plains. Smoke still rose from the crater where the alien ship had fallen. Sarah Chin stood by the fence, her eyes red from exhaustion, but her spirit unbroken. Around her, townsfolk worked quietly, carrying blankets, food, and tools toward the wreck. The Valani refugees, small, trembling creatures with silver eyes and translucent skin, huddled together inside makeshift tents. Dr. Miller moved between them, checking wounds. These burns are bad, he murmured. But their bodies heal differently. They might make it. Sarah nodded, wiping her hands on her jeans. Marcus stood beside her, holding a flashlight even though daylight had come. Mom, he whispered, what if the soldiers come back? Sarah glanced toward the horizon. Then we do what's right, she said softly. The morning wind carried a low hum, a sound that made everyone freeze. Marcus looked up. They're here. Dark shapes appeared in the sky again, military helicopters. Dust rose as they landed near the old highway. Soldiers spread out, their uniforms dark against the golden grass. A man in a long coat stepped forward. It was the same colonel from last night. His face was hard, but his eyes showed no cruelty. Mrs. Chen, he called out, his voice carrying over the wind, we gave you a chance to step aside. You didn't. Sarah walked toward him, calm but firm. They're hurt, she said. They're not soldiers. They're refugees. The colonel sighed. Refugees from where, exactly? You don't know what they are. For all we know, this could be a biological threat. They're people, Sarah said, her voice steady. They have children. That's all I need to know. Behind her, Marcus watched, his heart pounding. The Valani leader, a fragile figure named Thalen, stepped forward, limping slightly. His translator device flickered. We, not enemy, it said in a trembling voice. We run from destroyers. Our home, gone. The colonel looked at Thalen for a long moment. Then he turned back to Sarah. If I let this go, I could lose my command. Sarah met his gaze. If you don't, you might lose something more important. The soldiers exchanged glances. A few lowered their weapons. The tension grew heavy, pressing down on everyone. The Valani children hid behind Sarah's legs, their wide eyes reflecting the rising sun. Then a shout came from one of the soldiers near the ship. Sir, you need to see this. The colonel and Sarah hurried toward the crater. The soldier pointed at the ship's open hull. Inside, strange symbols glowed faintly, images showing burning planets, falling ships, and shadowy shapes chasing the Valani. Dr. Miller whispered, they weren't lying. They really were running from something. The colonel stared at the images. What are these things? Thalen's translator sparked, then spoke again. We call them the Dreekall. They hunt all life. A chill ran through everyone. Marcus whispered, so they came here because they had nowhere else to go. The colonel took a deep breath. He looked at his men. Then at Sarah. Finally he said quietly, "You have 12 hours. Get them hidden. After that I can't stop Washington from stepping in." Sarah nodded. 12 hours is enough. As the soldiers backed away and the helicopters lifted off again, the town erupted into quiet motion. Farmers brought tools to help dig shelters. Mechanics brought welding torches and fuel. Dr. Miller turned his barn into a medical tent. Marcus helped Thalen's group carry supplies. "Why us?" he asked softly. "Why come to Earth?" Thalen looked at him with tired eyes. "Because, long ago our explorers heard your message. A sound from space. You said, 'We are not alone and we come in peace.'" Marcus stopped walking. He remembered hearing that phrase in old history documentaries about Earth's first space missions. "That's why you came?" "Yes," Thalen said. "You kept your promise." As night fell again, the camp glowed with lanterns. The Veilani began to sing softly, a haunting melody that sounded like wind over water. The townspeople listened in silence. Sarah sat beside Marcus, staring up at the stars. "You see that?" she whispered. "That's what makes us human, Marcus. Not power. Not fear. Just heart." Far away on the horizon, faint red lights appeared, ships descending through the clouds. Marcus pointed. "Mom, are those more soldiers?" Sarah's expression hardened. "No," she said quietly. "Those are not human." The Veilani stopped singing. Thalen looked up, his face pale. "They found us." The wind howled over the plains. The stars dimmed behind the burning trails of the approaching ships. And for the first time, everyone realized, the real danger hadn't even started yet. The night sky burned red again over Montana. Sarah and Marcus stood near the crater, staring up at the streaks of fire crossing the clouds. Those weren't meteors. They were ships, dark, jagged, and alive with red light. "The Dreek Hall," Thalen whispered. His silver eyes glowed faintly in fear. "They found us. They never stop hunting." The ground trembled as one of the alien ships entered the atmosphere. It screamed like metal tearing the air apart. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. "Get everyone inside," she shouted. "Move." The townspeople ran for cover, dragging the wounded Veilani into barns and cellars. Dr. Miller helped 2 children inside, his hands shaking. The farm's animals cried out as the sound grew louder and louder. Then a flash, brighter than lightning, erupted across the horizon. A nearby field exploded into fire. The blast threw Sarah and Marcus to the ground. Dust and heat filled the air. "Mom?" Marcus shouted, coughing. "I'm fine," Sarah gasped, pushing herself up. Her ears rang, her heart pounding. "Where's Thalen?" The Veilani leader stumbled from behind the wreck, clutching his side. "They test ground first," he said through his translator. "They search for survivors." Sarah looked toward the town. "We have to warn them before." A second explosion cut her off. The shockwave shattered windows miles away. Fire climbed the trees at the edge of the valley. Marcus covered his head as debris rained down. Through the smoke, dark shapes descended from the Dreekall ship, machines that walked like animals, glowing red at their cores. Sarah froze. "Are those soldiers?" Thalen shook his head. "Hunters." The machines scanned the ground, emitting a low, mechanical growl. One of them turned toward Sarah's barn, the one hiding the injured Veilani children. "No," she whispered. "They'll kill them." Before she could think, Sarah grabbed a flare gun from her truck and fired it into the sky. The bright red light streaked upward, bursting above the field. The machines turned toward it instantly, drawn to the signal. "Mom, what are you doing?" Marcus cried. "Buying time," she said, grabbing his hand. "Run to the others." The machines began moving toward her position. Their footsteps shook the earth. Sarah ducked behind a tractor, reloading another flare. Sweat poured down her face, but she didn't stop. At the edge of the field, headlights appeared, military trucks speeding toward them. The colonel's convoy had returned. "Hold fire," the colonel shouted as he jumped out, weapon in hand. "Identify the threat." His men aimed rifles at the advancing machines. One soldier fired a test shot, only for the bullet to bounce off harmlessly. "They're armored," someone yelled. The Dreekall hunters opened fire. Red plasma bolts scorched the ground, tearing through fences and machinery. The colonel ducked beside Sarah. "You weren't exaggerating," he growled. "We've got hostiles, not refugees. They're after the Veilani." Sarah shouted back. "You have to protect them." The colonel hesitated, watching a small Veilani child trip near the fence as a hunter closed in. His jaw tightened. All units, he roared. Defend the civilians. Fall back to the crater line. Gunfire and alien plasma filled the air. The battle raged across the farmland, lighting the sky in bursts of red and blue. Marcus helped Dr. Miller drag the wounded behind an old water tank. Marcus, Sarah called, waving for him to stay down. A Dreecall hunter suddenly lunged toward them, its claws glowing. Sarah raised her flare gun. It was her last shot. She aimed at the creature's chest and fired. The flare struck, burning bright white. The machine staggered backward, its armor melting from the heat. Then it collapsed with a hiss. Everyone stared in shock. Marcus grinned shakily. You got it, Mom? Sarah exhaled hard. Guess it doesn't like fire. The colonel's radio crackled. Sir, more of them incoming. Dozens, maybe hundreds. He looked at Sarah grimly. We can't hold this place. If they surround us, we're finished. Thalen stepped forward, clutching a strange crystal from his ship. We can help, he said. This beacon. It calls our last defense. But we must power it. Sarah frowned. How? He looked at the burning wreck. The ship's core still alive. We link it, maybe it work. Marcus pointed toward the crater. Then let's do it. They sprinted across the battlefield under fire. Soldiers covered them while plasma bolts hit the ground inches away. Sarah and Thalen reached the broken hull, wires sparking around them. Tell me what to do, she shouted. Thalen handed her 2 glowing cables. Connect, blue to life current, red to ground. Sarah nodded, pressing the connectors together. Sparks flew. The crystal pulsed once, then again, brighter each time. A deep hum spread through the air, vibrating the ground. The beacon rose slowly, glowing brighter until the whole crater shone like a second sun. The Dreecall paused, their red lights flickering as if confused. The colonel shielded his eyes. What the hell is that thing? Thalen looked up, voice trembling. Hope. A shockwave burst outward from the beacon, pushing the hunters back. The Dreecall ships began to retreat into the sky, scattering like shadows in light. Everyone watched in awe as the glow faded, leaving silence behind. Sarah sank to her knees, exhausted. Did we win? Thalen shook his head slowly. No. They will return. But now, they know humanity stands with us. The colonel stared at Sarah, then at the smoking horizon. Then God help us all, he said quietly. Above them, the sky turned calm again, but in that calm, every heart knew something new had begun. The war wasn't over. It had just found Earth. The morning after the battle, smoke still drifted over the farmlands of Montana. Burned fields stretched for miles, and the faint smell of scorched metal hung in the air. Soldiers moved through the wreckage, silent and tired. The once quiet town had turned into a fortress overnight. Sarah Chin stood near the crater, her jacket torn and face smeared with dirt. Marcus was beside her, bandaged but safe. Around them, the Velani refugees worked to repair what was left of their ship, using strange silver tools that shimmered in the light. Thalen, their leader, walked slowly toward Sarah. Your people fought beside us, he said through his translator, his voice weak but full of respect. We owe you our lives. Sarah shook her head. You don't owe us anything. We did what anyone should have done. Thalen looked at her for a long moment. No, he said softly. Not anyone would. Some would fear. Some would destroy. You chose compassion. Sarah didn't answer. She looked out across the horizon where the Dreecall ships had fled. They'll come back, won't they? Thalen nodded slowly. Yes. They do not stop. They hunt across galaxies. The colonel approached them, removing his helmet. His uniform was covered in dust, and his eyes were heavy with concern. We've sent reports to Washington, he said. Command doesn't believe half of it. They think this was a meteor strike or a weapons test. Sarah crossed her arms. Then they're blind. They'll see soon enough, the colonel replied. We picked up transmissions before the Dreecall pulled out, encrypted signals spreading through space. If they call for reinforcements, this place will become a war zone. Thalen looked toward his ship. We can stop that. The beacon we used, it reached farther than they know. It sent a message to others who still resist the Dreecall. Others? Marcus asked. Thalen turned to him. Yes. Survivors from other worlds. Hidden. Waiting. If they hear Earth's signal, they may come. Sarah frowned. Or they might bring more trouble with them. Thalen gave a faint smile. Sometimes hope is trouble. But it is better than silence. As they spoke, the air filled with a faint hum. The damaged alien ship's core flickered back to life, casting a soft blue glow over the crater. Strange symbols appeared on the walls, maps of distant stars and unknown systems. Dr. Miller came running from the barn. "You'd better see this," he said breathlessly. Everyone gathered around a screen from the Valani ship. On it, hundreds of glowing dots appeared, each one pulsing faintly. Marcus frowned. "What is that?" Thalen touched the screen gently. "Those are distress signals. From others like us." The beacon woke them. Sarah felt a chill. "So they'll all be coming here?" Thalen nodded. "To the planet that fought the Dreekall and survived." The colonel muttered, "Then Earth just became a lighthouse in the dark." Suddenly an alarm went off in the camp. A soldier shouted, "Unidentified object entering atmosphere. Fast." Everyone looked up. The sky turned pale gold as something streaked across it, small, glowing, and silent. It didn't crash this time, it slowed, hovering above the crater. The Valani fell to their knees, whispering in their language. Thalen stared in disbelief. "That's not Dreekall. That's one of ours." They heard the call. The object landed softly, unfolding like a flower made of light. From it emerged a tall figure wrapped in flowing silver armor, unlike any the humans had seen. Its voice was deep but calm. "Thalen of the Valani," it said. "You survived." Thalen bowed deeply. "Because of them," he said, pointing to Sarah and Marcus. The newcomer turned its glowing eyes toward Sarah. "Humanity. The old stories were true." Sarah blinked. "Stories?" "Yes," the being said. "Long ago we heard whispers of a young world that promised peace and mercy. We never believed it until now." The colonel stepped forward, tense but respectful. "If your friends will take all the help we can get. Those monsters Dreekall are coming back." The armored being nodded. "Then we stand together. But know this, by helping us, Earth has revealed itself to the galaxy. You cannot hide again." The words hit hard. Sarah looked around at the tired soldiers, the frightened refugees, and her son. "We weren't hiding," she said softly. "We were just waiting for a reason to stand." The newcomer smiled faintly. "Then you have found it." As the sun rose, its light reflected off the alien armor and the wrecked machines. The wind blew gently through the golden fields, carrying with it the faint hum of distant stars awakening. Marcus stood beside his mother, eyes wide with wonder. "Mom," he said quietly, "do you think Earth's ready for all this?" Sarah didn't answer right away. She looked toward the sky, where new lights were already appearing, ships descending, drawn by the beacon's call. "Ready or not," she said finally, "the universe just found us." The colonel adjusted his weapon and stared upward. "Then we'd better show them what humanity really is." Above them, the new ships descended through the clouds, and for the first time, the people of Earth realized that their world was no longer alone. The age of isolation was over. And the age of humanity among the stars had just begun. The sky over Montana no longer looked the same. Where once only stars glittered, now strange new lights shimmered, ships, hundreds of them, slowly orbiting Earth. They had come in response to the signal sent by the Valani survivors. For the first time in human history, the night sky looked alive. Sarah Chin stood outside her farmhouse, the same porch where she had watched the crash weeks ago. Marcus sat on the steps beside her, a blanket around his shoulders, staring at the sky in awe. "Mom," he whispered, "do you think they're all friendly?" Sarah didn't answer right away. The truth was she didn't know. But deep inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The Valani ship had been repaired with the help of human engineers and scientists. Together they built something new, half human, half alien. The barn had become a base filled with translators, energy cells, and strange metal tools that glowed like captured lightning. Colonel Rodriguez had turned her troops into protectors instead of guards. Every day new messages came from governments, scientists, and even ordinary people asking what they could do to help. Humanity was waking up. Yet not everyone trusted what was happening. Some feared invasion. Some demanded the aliens leave. News networks argued day and night: was Earth safe? Was this the beginning of peace, or the beginning of war? One evening, as Sarah brought food to the Valani children, she found Thalen staring up at the stars with a grim expression. "What is it?" she asked quietly. He hesitated, his silver eyes reflecting the firelight. "We have seen these signs before. When hope rises, darkness follows. The Dreekall will not forgive what you did." Sarah looked toward the horizon. "Let them come," she said. "They'll find Earth ready." Thalen turned to her slowly. "You would fight for others who are not your kind?" Sarah smiled faintly. "We already did." That night the first warnings came. Alien probes entered the solar system, silent, dark, and fast. Satellites detected them and the world panicked. But before governments could even respond, something unexpected happened. The newcomers, ships that had answered the Villani's call, moved. They formed a defensive line between Earth and the edge of the system. Messages flooded through translated frequencies. We stand with Earth. We remember compassion. Humanity's kindness will not be forgotten. In command centers across the planet, generals and scientists stared at the screens, speechless. Colonel Rodriguez stood beside Sarah at the makeshift command tent, watching the radar light up. "We might be about to witness the largest space battle in history," she said softly. Sarah didn't flinch. "Then the galaxy's going to learn what humanity stands for." Above the Earth, the Dreekall fleet arrived. Massive and dark, their ships swallowing the stars like shadows. The alien alliance held formation, trembling but defiant. And then, through the chaos of coded signals and strange transmissions, one clear human voice broke through the static. "This is Earth Command. You entered our skies once uninvited. This time we are ready." Across every screen, across every world that could intercept the broadcast, humanity spoke together for the first time. "We are not conquerors. We are not monsters. We are protectors. The refugees you hunted are under our care now. If you wish to harm them again, you will go through us." Silence followed. Even space seemed to hold its breath. Then the Dreekall ships opened fire. Blinding light filled the upper atmosphere as the first energy blast struck. Human satellites overloaded and radio signals screamed. But Earth's allies, the Velani, the Turin, the Oryx, answered with fire of their own. From the ground, Sarah and Marcus could see the battle above the clouds, flashes like lightning storms across the heavens. It was terrible, beautiful, and unforgettable. One Dreekall cruiser broke through and fell burning toward the planet. Alarms blared. Soldiers scrambled. The ship hit the distant plains in a roar of fire, shaking the earth beneath their feet. Sarah grabbed Marcus and ran to the shelter, but even as the shockwave rolled across the valley, she looked back and whispered, "They'll hold. I know they will." Hours later, the sky cleared. The Dreekall ships were gone, retreating, broken. The alien fleet that defended Earth had held its ground. The signal was sent once more, this time not a distress call, but a promise. "To all worlds who hear this," Phelan's voice echoed through the translators. "Humanity stands with the lost, the hunted, the broken. This small blue world chose compassion over fear, and in doing so, changed the galaxy." Across distant worlds, beings of all kinds listened. And for the first time in countless generations, the galaxy believed in something new. Sarah stood with Marcus and Colonel Rodriguez as dawn rose over the valley. The light painted the fields gold, warm and alive. Marcus looked at the sky and smiled. "Mom, they'll write songs about this someday." Sarah smiled back. "Maybe. But I hope they write about the day we chose kindness first." Colonel Rodriguez exhaled, staring at the rising sun. "The galaxy just met humanity," she said. "I don't think it'll ever be the same again." High above, the Velani and their new allies drifted among the stars, keeping watch. And below them, Earth began to rebuild, not out of fear but unity. Because on that day when the universe came crashing down, humanity did something no empire ever expected. They didn't hide. They didn't destroy. They helped. And in doing so, they became something greater than anyone had imagined. The day humanity answered the stars had finally begun.